Coach Nick, welcome to the Hollyfield Nutrition Podcast. It's so good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Holly. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, you're a podcast pro. I love your show with your co-host Amanda and everything you do. So I'm so excited to talk with you today, especially about the topic of like coaching the whole person. As a running coach yourself, who I think you're really good about talking about like this type of topic, and you're very in tune with the fact that you're not just like coaching robots. You're coaching real people with really dynamic lives. So, I mean, tell everyone who you are, where you're located, and what you do.
Yeah, sure. My name's Nick Klastava. I live in just outside Baltimore in Maryland. I grew up in New Jersey, and then moved out of there about 15 years ago. I constantly thought I'd go back, and now I'm pretty happy in Maryland, of being able to afford a home.
Mhm.
But yeah, so a little about me. I am a running coach. I've been doing this about 7 years now. I am a podcast host. Holly, you were on our podcast, one of my favorite episodes. And I have recently quit my job in the federal government. So we're 2 weeks removed from that. And
Nice.
so learning the ropes of being a creative business owner and coach and all the things. So it's a lot more to come, but loving the flexibility of taking the kids to the bus stop every day and picking them up and just being able to be at more things.
Yeah. How old are your kids?
They're 8 and 6.
Oh, okay, yeah. So they're at the bus stop. They're doing the school thing. That's great. I mean, I know I can appreciate how scary it is to quit your job. I didn't do it when I had kids, so I imagine it's got different stressors when that's the case, but very cool. And we're very excited to have you full time in this space with talking about running and being a coach and a creative. We need more people like you in the space. So it's great to have you. Um, Let's hear a little bit about your running background, because I know you've been running for a long time, and I'm sure that affects like how you talk about running and coach people.
Yeah, I started in 1996. I was a freshman in high school, and I figured I'd make the basketball team, and that would be my route. And I was the tallest kid in the team, and I missed in tryouts. They told me I was the wrong height, and I really figured it out right away that it was just bad. My glasses kept falling on the court, and so I went to the track team, and I was like, I want to be a pole vaulter and javelin thrower. And the head coach was like, "You're a distance runner." I was like, "What?" And so my freshman year, I did not embrace it much. I sort of cut runs and stuff. But then my sophomore year, summer, I had a nice coach who was like just out of college, and like he'd run with us and talk with us. And I really started understanding this is what running is, and I really liked it. And so I ran in high school, I ran in college, and then my senior year sort of burnt out for a lot of reasons. Classes started interfering with practice every day, and other reasons. And so after college, I stopped running for 8 years, and we moved from New Jersey to Maryland. And I was a very competitive runner in college. You know, I was D1 running mid pack. I mean, it wasn't that good, but good enough. Um, and so when I came back, it was a struggle to, accept where I'm at 8.5 years later. And
Mm.
so I struggled with all the things I think runners struggle with, from, comparing to older versions of themselves, comparing to others, like not knowing things and just or thinking they know everything. And so it slowed my progress a lot, from 2011 to 2017. And I got a coach in 2017, and very supportive coach, very different from the coaches you'd have as a male in the late 90s, early 2000s, who just yelled at you and called you names and told you to man up. Um,
Be
and
tougher.
be tougher, always be tougher, right? And
Yeah.
so, um, yeah, so and then I really embraced it. And so I had my second journey in running. I started having success at about 38. So like 15 years removed from college, 16 years from college, I started breaking my 5K, my 10K PRs, and ran my marathon PR at 37 and half marathon PR at 38. And I just learned a lot of like what I thought running was as a college kid, and how deep in the data I was, and how obsessed with the numbers I was, and how when I started removing a lot of that stuff and just letting things come and like understanding the sport, I started getting better again and like running faster than I was as a 21-year-old, which is crazy because at the shorter distances, it's hard to be that fast as you get older. And so yeah, my origin story really is of someone who like ran at a high competitive level and then, became a coach and can understand the sport from an everyday runner perspective. And I think a lot of high competitive runners can't grasp that
Mhm.
people see this sport differently or approach it differently or how they view information and like how you can tell that story to people to help them love the running the way they do, but also chase their potentials.
Yeah, I love that. I think I always love asking about people's backgrounds because I mean your background's totally different than mine. Like I did a different sport and then I started running recreationally in college as like stress relief kind of thing and then it kind of snowballed from there. I think when you've done a sport for like a really long time since your teens and kind of through those formative years, it's hard because you're not going to always keep getting better.
Yeah.
And there's going to be like life transitions and I think it's really interesting to learn how people navigate those because I with runners we're really hard on ourselves and I think a lot of us are really good at comparing like this version of ourselves to a past version of ourselves. So I just appreciate you sharing that. It also sounds like you had kind of like a couple different coaching experiences. So I'm curious to like what made you want to become a run coach and kind of eventually go all in on this career path.
Yeah, I always thought I'd coach at like a high school, and then my job really never allowed it because practice starts at 3 o'clock, and
Yeah.
my job wasn't going to let me leave at 2:30 to make it over there, and so it just never worked out. And so I had some friends at locally who were looking for a coach around 2018, and I said, "Oh, I'll try this, like to see if I like it." For me, I love teaching. I loved the journey I went through, and I want to try and help people not have to replicate it. Meaning, like I was so hard on myself and it slowed me down so much because I just constantly, you live when you ran track in high school and college, you live yourself life like 400 meters at a time. And so like I knew every split, I knew every number, 100 meters in, I'd be like, I'm off, I'm on. It was
Mhm.
exhausting.
Yeah.
And like just those things that I see replicate to runners, the things I see that I struggled with early on, I thought were the most important thing that truly weren't. Like helping
Mhm.
people get that experience, but being able to, one of the things I excelled in my government job was like I could take technical information and give it to leadership at a way they understood. Like same thing
Mhm.
with running. I feel very good that I can talk as someone who's run very fast times. And I don't really ever talk about my times because I don't think that's what makes me a good coach. But being able to talk at that level and explain it to people and understand why it matters at their level, right?
Yeah.
Without all the technical jargon of, oh, you have to run zone two because of this. Like, yes, that makes sense, but what do they really need to know to understand why this matters? Like, what is really at it, not just the buzzwords that get thrown around the community. And so I really wanted to I just love being invested in people's journeys. Like, I'm a very empathetic person. So, like,
Mhm.
taking on other people's energy and being invested in their running is like sometimes almost to my own detrimental. Like then it like hurts me. Like I'll sometimes be so invested in my athletes, I'll forget about myself. I have to do races that they're not at
Yeah.
if I want to like focus on myself. And so yeah, I really enjoyed working with my two friends. So I sort of started trying to reach out a little more. And then Mary Johnson runs Lift Run Perform. And I reached out to her in 2019 and I was like, "Hey, you have all these female coaches. Would you ever take a male coach?"
Mhm.
And so we sort of talked and we vibed. And so I joined up there and sort of took it on a couple more athletes. And then COVID hit and I was home more and I started like try to embrace running a little more. And so really, really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed like how much joy it brought my life to like be on people's journeys and be a part of it and see them grow. Right. I've had athletes for 6 years now to watch like their lives change. Like they've gotten married, they've had kids, they're out trying to have a second kid, like they've been through work changes, job changes, life stressors. Like you're just there and like you're embracing, you're like part of it, and you can't like fix that stuff. You can
Mhm.
fix their training, you can be a part of their team. You're like a meaningful part of it, and it's like so cool. So,
Yeah.
to go all in was scary, right? I did a lot of this on the side for 5.5 years, and it would take up time on the weekends. I'd miss some sports for the kids. I'd miss some parties. And I
Mhm.
sort of told myself, hey, if the government ever kind of goes in a direction I'm not excited about, like I have this backup plan. And so,
Yeah.
this year a lot of stuff changed. I won't get into that, but like just, for me, I was like, I have this other path and why don't I lean in? I can't
Mhm.
do both for the rest of my life. And so for me, it was like, this is bringing me joy. I really like this. I've never given it my 100% attention let's see what happens.
So cool. Yeah, so cool. I like, yep, even the lemons can be turned into lemonade. But yeah, being a government employee is always hard because yeah, the administration changes and you're like, oh, this is all different. So I can appreciate that. I think you really alluded well to like how well you do at coaching the whole athlete. Like you're invested in their life stressors and their life transitions and like how running changes for them. I've had similar experiences where I've worked with people for like maybe a year or two and I help coach them through like, a couple races. And then for whatever reason, they pause coaching or they go a different route or I go a different route, whatever. And it's a different experience than like the people that I've had for like 5, 6 years, where yeah, I'm like, okay, now we're having a baby, or now we're getting married, or we're moving, or we're going to grad school, or, we're doing all of this big life stuff. And running has to look different. And I think the cool thing about being able to be the coach for that person is that you can kind of help them not beat themselves up if running starts to be less competitive than it was a year ago or look different than it did before. Because otherwise, I feel like sometimes people just kind of want to go like crawl into a corner by themselves and like go through it alone, because of how runners can be. But to you, like, what does it mean to coach the whole athlete?
Yeah, it's my favorite part. I think it's so important because I like to say I'm a very humanistic coach, and that means like I am experienced co-pilot on someone's journey, but like their journey is their journey, right? But like what how am I helping coach the whole athlete is by being there, right? Like I've heard so many athletes run really fast times with a coach and then leave them after the race because the coach didn't reach out afterwards or even say anything, and it's like how could you not be like so ecstatic about an athlete running a race? Like forget your communication plan, whatever you set up, like
Mhm.
whatever the path is of communication, like make sure you're reaching out after a race. Like that's the pinnacle of some of this journey, right? And so like not only that, but like how do you show up in the moments that matter the most, right? Like that's the stuff that matters too. How do you know what's going on in your athletes' lives within like the time you have allocated to be a coach? Like how do you use that time value? And how do you make sure that they know when they take a big shot or a big risk that you'll be there to catch them when they fall? I think the problem with virtual coaching is for a lot of people, they've never met their coach. It's done through an
Mhm.
app, it's done through the internet. And a lot of coaches think all an athlete wants, is a fast time. And so they'll run their athletes through trial by fire coaching, right? Like as hard as they can possibly do, push, push, push. Everything matters. Keep going harder, harder, harder. And as type A, this sport is perfectionism. Type A never want to let their coach down. People will do it because they think the coach has the best interest, and the coach does to some degree. But sometimes coaches have their own egos, and
Mhm.
they want a fast time to show how great they are.
Yeah.
And when your investment is on results as a coach, you're missing it. Like you're missing the mark because you are pushing your athletes too far for the results that you need to validate yourself. When you're
Mhm.
investing in the whole athlete, when you're there with them, if the athlete feels supported and loved and that you're showing up in their corner and they know you're going to catch them and they know they could take big risks because you will be there to build them back up, then that is the win, and the athlete is loving you and they want you still there. So coaching the whole human is knowing what's going on with this human being and knowing that their life will affect their running, and
Yeah.
knowing that no training block's going to be, oh, every workout went perfectly, I never got in my head. It's going to be, oh, I got to the taper, it didn't feel easy enough, so now I'm doubting 14 weeks of training. How do you help me through that, right? How do we help me believe in myself to do something I've never done before? That's our job as coaches, to help an
Mhm.
athlete believe in themselves, not to just run them so hard that the belief comes because they're too tired to not believe in themselves. Like, no, we need confidence, and this is our job. How do we help you see through the perspective or the perception of like this whole training block, all the stress you went through, and how that matters? So, being coaching a whole human means knowing that this person there has is very complex and has a lot going on, and that you are willing to learn that stuff and understand that stuff and support them through whatever life throws at them to help them grow, because at the end of the day it's not always about the times on a clock. It's about the growth that someone has from working with a coach. They'll learn about running, they'll learn about themselves. I've changed so much because I've been a runner and because of what I went through. And like this is because I'm an athlete and I'm trying, and this is what we're trying to do as coaches to help people grow.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, kind of in that same vein, like what do you get with a coach, like just for people listening who has this mindset compared to the free training plan or like the Runna type apps, or even like coaches who, yeah, are just like delivering something through VO2 dot and never checking in. Like, what do they get outside of the training plan? Like, how do you connect with your athletes outside of just like, go do this 5 mile easy run?
Yeah, and so like run on AI, stuff like that, even these trial by fire coaches, they're about the destination, right?
Yeah.
And they're pushing you towards that destination. It's all an AI knows. You give it an input, it gives you the output, which is your destination. And it'll give you a plan to get there. Maybe it's too hard, maybe it won't adapt to you, maybe it doesn't understand you. Same thing at trial by fire coaches. I want to run this time. Oh, well, I'll throw you through fire. If you survive, you'll get it. And if you get hurt, like I don't care. The app doesn't care. The trial by fire coach doesn't care. You're just a number to them, right? In most cases. So, when you feel like a number to someone, whether it's the app or a person, you feel like not, your journey doesn't matter. And you feel like you're not having someone in your corner. You feel like you're only being looked at when you run well.
Mhm.
The app, obviously, machine doesn't care what your time is. It's just trying to get you there. But like those trial by fire coaches, like sometimes I hear like the athletes don't feel even heard until they run a fast time and they're like, "Oh, well, you ran a PR. I'm so excited for you." Like your job as a coach is to find the those moments in the muck, right? Like how can you find a magical moment when maybe things aren't going well? Because that's how you get someone out of it, right? If you know them and understand them, you can see through this mess that, oh well, but you managed to do like more miles than you ever done this year. I know you didn't run a PR, but you had a baby, and or you went through a life change or work stress or job change or moved, and still you ran more miles than ever. Like that's a win, and that's growth for the future.
Mhm.
And so you're getting with a coach who's invested, you're getting someone who is truly on your team and who is supporting you through the stress of life. These
Mhm.
apps are just there, these things are just there to kind of push you to say, okay, well, you want a PR, that's it. I think a lot of runners think when they start that it's just about all I care about is fast time.
Mhm.
I just want to be faster. I want to be Q. I want to run this number. The people who've been in this sport forever understand that it's so much more than that, and that the person you're becoming is really what matters. And to be in this sport long enough, you have to embrace that because the PRs will dry up. I've been doing running for 20, I don't know, math, 28 years with a little
Mhm.
break in the middle. Like I run one PR every few years, and recently not as much at all. But like even in my best years, I'd run one PR a year, maybe. Professionals run one PR every few years, and they've been doing the sport for 15, 20 years. The PRs can't always be the answer because you'll just quit because you're like, I can't run a PR anymore. Why bother?
Mhm.
So if you're not embracing the journey or the hero's journey, and this is what I always like to say, the hero's journey of an athlete, your job as a coach is you're transforming them through this journey of life, and they're growing so much. And athletes in the beginning don't really think that that matters or think that that's a part of it. But the ones who truly stay here and get the most out of coaching are the ones who see, I am growing because of this. I am challenging myself. I am doing things I've never done. It's the mom who started running as a stress relief and then
Mhm.
found love in this sport. And so many people will fight back and be like, "Well, you're doing it wrong." No one's doing running wrong. Like
Yeah.
whatever your goals are, whatever you're trying to chase, however you want to show up, that's awesome. Like everyone's goal isn't always to like run the fastest time in the world and keep doing it. And if they don't, they're failures. They want to grow. And so a mindset coach who's involved in coaching the whole athlete is someone who helps you see that, who helps you be your vision. Take your big goals, shoot your big shots, but don't get lost in the sauce along the way.
How do you help people like who are really stuck there? Like who maybe got into running and like beginners, fitness gains is always great because you're like every time I run a race, I'm getting faster at first,
Yeah.
basically, just because I'm consistent. And that can be really like addictive for a lot of people. And it's hard, I think, for everyone when, yeah, you slow down or you don't always get a PR, or yeah, like you said, the PRs come a lot more scarcely. How do you help people refocus to different goals? Like what do you recommend they focus on, or just with talking to all of your athletes over the years too, like what other goals have you found people come up with that seem to be very positive that aren't just about the time on the clock?
Yeah, sometimes it's different race distances, right? Like a lot of people get stuck on the marathon. So sometimes it's, oh, I'll do a 50K, or I've never done a half, or I've never trained for a half, let alone like I never trained for a 5K. So sometimes it's just changing up the distance. Sometimes it's embracing this season of life, right? Like if it's a stressful time, maybe we're just trying to build base and we're just trying to do new workouts that are challenging. Maybe we're adding more cross training in. Maybe we're just being okay with life being heavy and that we're doing a little less, right? When it comes other goals I've seen athletes see is sometimes like, they tend to lean on numbers and I try and push away like, oh, I'll just do a new mileage record. I'm like, okay, but that's like the same thing, only different.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
and so it's like, it's like helping them like, hey, where do you want to be in 3 years? Like, what can we focus on now to get there? Maybe we're focusing a little more strength training. Like maybe most runners aren't prioritizing it enough. Maybe we're prioritizing fueling. Like it's easier to try new fueling methods for long runs when you're not in the middle of a training block where your goals demand like you can't screw up all your long runs, right? So, oh well, I used to take one gel every hour. Okay, well, why don't we shoot for two, big gels per hour in this training block where we're not really focused on a big goal, time goal, and try that. Maybe we try carbo loading before our long runs instead of just waiting for the week of the race to the first time and go, oh, I'm just going to try this 790 gram a 3 day carbo load. Do it in your training runs before your 20 milers. Like, so embrace little things that help you grow and be prepared for the harder things. Like, I think so often it's either I am training for a goal and now I'm all in. I'm gonna do all this stuff. Or oh, it's an off season. I don't really care, so I'm just gonna like have fun, not really worry about things. Well, why can't we in the middle? Why can't we try things that aren't necessarily about a time and a clock, but to grow ourselves as runners and to grow ourselves in this journey and to learn more about ourselves? So like doing hydration, checks like with Nicks or Level In or a sweat test, right? Learning that stuff's a great thing to do in a season where it's not about a goal or a time and a clock, but it's about learning yourself and understanding it so you can perform better when you need to.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And I agree. It's so true. Like, I think if to keep using the AI example, like if you were to type into any like chat GBT type situation and say, like, what do I do to optimize my running? Like, it would probably give you like 13 bullet points and like a bunch of stuff you could work on. And I think a lot of type A athletes are like, I'm just going to do all of it
Yep.
during this training block where I'm training for the Chicago Marathon to run my PR race. And it's like, whoa. If we've never done half of these things and we're going to start changing many different factors, that's not always a great thing. That can stress us out way too much, and I'll see people do that. And while I don't think it's always bad if people like sign up to work with me during like their training block for a PR race to work on their fueling, I tend to find people do a lot better when they do it in the off season, and that's kind of when they start, or they do it when they're not really training for anything, or they're not really like married to a goal because it's stressful because it's change and change is really stressful, especially for runners who just like routine. So I appreciate you saying that because I think looking at these different like process and big picture type of oriented goals are really important. And I think a lot of people just want to kind of overwhelm themselves all at once. So a coach can be helpful to help you like kind of focus in on what's actually going to be helpful. That was another thing I wanted to ask you too, is with the some of the weaknesses that I see for like run apps or just the trial by fire coaching or any training plan that you can find online is if you're a runner and you're like, I don't really have like a ton of exercise physiology or coaching background education. I'm just kind of like doing this for fun. And what I see on social media is that people are running several marathons per year, or like they're running every single local race, or they're always trying to go after PR. So I guess that's what I should be doing. So I'm going to do that too. Is I see people just kind of like plugging into Runna or telling their coach, okay, I did that race. Now I'm going to do this race. And I think where those types of training platforms or training plans can really be lacking is like the guidance on the big picture and longevity, like you were saying. Like, okay, but we've done several marathons per year for like 3 years, and you keep saying how exhausted you are, or you're plateauing, or you're getting injured a lot. So, like, maybe we should reconsider the big picture thinking. How do you approach like those conversations with your athletes?
Yeah, and what you going through is like it's not those apps, those coaches aren't about the journey, right? They're about, oh, just okay, well, you want to be faster marathon, just run them all the time, right? And just keep
Yeah.
running until you figure it out. And like that's all they know. And so, to help athletes understand, like I always say, like the faster you can sprint, the faster you can run a marathon. Like a lot of people don't get that concept. Like that's why we do strides. That's why we do 5Ks. Like if you can run a 5K faster, it helps your running economy and you can run a marathon faster. It is literally how it works, right? And so
Yeah.
doing short distance races helps. I used to fall into the trap where like if my half marathon was slower than my goal for my marathon, I'd get in my head and be like, oh, I just PR'd in the half twice. Like that would like mess me up, even if I was fit enough to do it. So like attacking other PRs along the way, so you don't like get stuck in that mindset of like, oh, I've never run this fast before in the middle of a race that's longer than that. Um, so yeah, I think, and I think what happens is, like you said, the social media influencers, they sort of take these things and run with them. People think the answer is to run multiple 3 4 marathons a year, wherever it's getting to. I've never run more than one marathon in a year. I will do it this year if I make it to Marine Corps, but outside of that, like I always just do one a year. That's all I've ever wanted. It's a big stress on my body. It's a big recovery, and I have other races and other goals that are fun. And
Mhm.
I think a lot of what happens is this messaging gets pushed that the marathon is the most important. Like if you look at even hashtags, like the marathon, just hashtag marathon
Oh
is like
yeah.
15 million, and hashtag half marathon is like 5 million. So
Yeah.
like just the amount of people just sharing about their race like shows you how many more people are running. Like, and I know the numbers don't say that there's more marathons than half, but the people on social media sharing about it are clearly sharing that the marathon is the goal because it's the furthest and it's the hardest.
Mhm.
Running a half is super hard. Running a 5K is super hard. It's
Oh,
just
super hard.
you
Yeah.
just but like a couple minutes later, you feel better when you finish. So there's like that. You just have to push through that. And so, but those skills you learn like matter. Or like in this stuff, why we do a 5K is because when you can push through that type of pain and get to your goal, like then it feels a little less hard in a marathon to push through a different level and uncomfortable for a longer period of time. I did a
Mhm.
50 miler once.
Mm.
And it went pretty poorly after 28 miles because why wouldn't it? Because of my longest, I really only ran marathons in 150K. So, but I learned a lot about myself from 28 to 38 because like I was like, this is the darkest place I've ever been in my life. I am literally dying here. And every time I did a marathon, I'm like, well, it's not worse than that. Like, like I can keep going. It wasn't worse than that. And so,
Yeah.
teaching people kind of to embrace other races, teaching people to kind of like get away from like the cult sensation of social media and how it's pushing people to do these things that aren't necessarily for your goals. And just helping people align with like, you know, these tools are designed just to push you as hard as possible, right? There is no understanding of life. There is no understanding of life stress. There is no understanding of like what's going on with you in a moment. It can't like, and it can take your heart rate data and maybe extrapolate and go, oh, it seems like the heart rate's a little high, so let's adjust. It's the best it can do, but that doesn't always tell the full picture. And so yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is like just sort of helping people acknowledge that like there's more races, there's changes, and there's abilities to have fun in different ways in running other than just more marathons.
Yeah, I think the coach's biggest role in that situation is, okay, what race do you want to run? Or like, what do you want to do if it's not a race? And then, okay, why? Tell me why, because I think you can learn a lot about the athlete and where they're coming from in that moment. Because I've done that to people, and some of them are like, oh, I don't know why. I think it's because I feel like I should. That's probably not a good reason, though. So I think the apps and the plans, yeah, they're just not a replacement for coaching. I'm curious too, just because of your running background, and just you've been a runner for such a long time. Like, what would you tell your beginner runner self about the athlete that you've become, and how did you refocus your own goals past just the time on the clock? Because it sounds like you had to kind of do that pretty early.
Yeah, early on, like I had success because it was new, and early on I had success because I was focused on short distances and like just those reasons, right? And so, but I used to know all my splits and whether I was off or on and how I was doing, and then it would be like mess me up if it wasn't good enough, right? And so that was okay when I was maintaining a similar level of fitness the whole time from college to high school, or high school to college, I mean. And so when I came back, well, then in my mind, I still knew those numbers because you just never forget because you're crazy as a runner. And you're like, I
Yeah.
used to run 400s at this time. And so I'd go on track and I wouldn't be able to do that. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so far away. This is so impossible. I used to run mile splits at this time, nowhere near that. And like if I kept holding on to that, like it was crushing me, right? It was making me feel like I was nowhere near I'd ever be, and kept thinking I would never get there. And my coach, what he helped me do with was he kind of I told him like I used the quote from Fast and Furious: "I live my life 400 meters at a time, a quarter mile at a time." And he was like, "Well, we're
Love
not
it.
running the track anymore." And I was like, "Okay." And so I did all my runs on roads. I even started embracing so far as to not take splits on my runs. So like maybe I'm doing 8 times 2 minutes on, 2 minutes off. And so
Mhm.
with a 10-minute, 15-minute warm up, so at 15 minutes, I'd run hard for 2 minutes. My watch wouldn't auto split. I wouldn't
Mhm.
split it. I would just run hard for 2 minutes. And at 17 minutes, I'd jog for 2 minutes. And then I'd finish the whole run as long as I felt like after the last rep, I could do one more. I was like, okay, I put out the right amount of effort, but I would
Mhm.
not know what the splits were. I never did. I ran a quality workout. I ended feeling confident in myself and it ended up growing that way. And so a lot of that embracing just that the numbers weren't defining me or my process really helped me get out of that. I think the tempo run is the one that really most runners struggle with because you're either good at longer distances or you're good at shorter distances. I'm very good at, give me mile repeats and under, I'll rip it. That
Mhm.
was some of my strong spots. But like, give me a 15-minute tempo, uh, I would die, right? Like, and the
Yeah.
paces I needed to hit for the times I was running were not were not matching. And a lot of times I would finish a tempo, 15-minute tempo, which is a pace you're supposed to run for almost an hour, and I'd be dead. And I'd be on my hands and knees and I'd be like, well, I hit the numbers, but
Yeah. But damn.
dead. But and then but what you don't realize is like, oh, well, you think you're just hitting the numbers and that's fine because the numbers matter. But what really means is I'm running basically a 5K or maybe even slower whatever distance race in my training because I'm all out.
Yeah.
And that is not gaining stuff. And so it took me to say, okay, well, now I need to like, how do I embrace the tempo for what it is? I need to finish this run knowing I could do it almost 4 more times if it's 15 minutes. And so slow down, the paces get slower and be okay with that, knowing that this is my weakness as like a tempo, either because it's, challenging with someone with ADHD to like focus that long, or just like that's my body just struggles a little more at that. And so I had to embrace and my tempos got slower, but then I started getting faster. Um, and so helping runners, that's a story I tell a lot. I also tell a story of how when I ran my 2.5 hour marathon, which is 5:45 pace, I ran
Mhm.
zero long runs, even though they said do it at marathon pace at 5:45 pace. I ran them all at 6 to 6:15,
Mhm.
all of them. But I felt very, very comfortable at 6 to 6:15. But if I would have pushed down to that pace, it was hard. It was like pushing me too far. I was dying. I wasn't able to maintain it. So I just embraced where I was at. And then on race day, I ran 26 miles at 5:45 pace, minus the last couple, which were a little slow. But like that aside, like it didn't need to. I didn't need to. People think you have to practice this exact number in training you can't do in race day. The goal of training is to gain fitness, not prove it, right? So I would say workouts are about gaining fitness, not proving it. And so when the numbers start defining you too much, start getting into your head, start holding you back, that's when you need to take a step back and go, is this serving me right? Do I need to do a workout without a watch? Do I need to do a workout without splits? It's a miracle how many times you can ask an athlete to not look at their splits during a workout. If they're really getting in their head, say, don't look at it all, come back, send me a text and tell me how the workout went before you looked. And they'll be like, oh, it felt so hard. I probably missed all my splits. And then I'm like, okay, send me another text now after you looked. And they're like, oh, wow, I hit every split. I didn't even know that could happen. I'm like, yes, because your body can do this stuff. Your mind is holding you back. And
Mhm.
so the numbers to me always are this thing that I feel like it's sometimes they serve us well. And at those times, yeah, embrace them. But there's a lot of times they aren't helping us. And when they aren't helping us, you don't have to then lean harder into them and beat yourself up more. Maybe you just need to remove them from your training for a little bit and embrace the training itself and see where it can go.
I couldn't agree more. I want to ask you too. You had a great thread up like maybe a month ago about like if your coach is fast, does that matter to you? Basically. And you got a lot of interesting responses because I think runners in general tend to be data-driven people. And I think social media influencer space kind of really drives that, especially like the classic Instagram where you're just like, this is a selfie after my run and the splits are all there. I think that's probably one of the biggest instigators because we have this like data tracker on our wrist all the time. Um, you know, how do you go about like what things have you pulled from different coaches that you've had that you're like, I really like that. I use that for a lot of my athletes because it worked well for me and I'm seeing it working well for them. Versus like just helping people be a bit more data driven or rather than data disordered, if that makes sense. It sounds like pulling the data out of it can be really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that was like, so a lot of like being a coach is like your journey, like not like reselling it, but like the things I've gone through are the things that make me who I am. And the things that I've struggled with are things all runners are struggling with. I've lived a lifetime of running. And so, like, I'm trying to teach that stuff, teach that experience to runners. Like, some runners may not have problems with numbers for a long time, they will
Mhm.
at some point. because they'll get
Mhm.
faster and faster. And like all of a sudden it's like, it's always a round number. Like, oh, I'm running a half marathon in the sevens. That's fine. Oh my God, it's sixes now. This feels so hard. It's impossible. There's no way I could run all my marathon with all sixes. Like, we all have that. It's a round number, 3 hours, 4 hours, 3.5, whatever it is.
Mhm.
So, runners hit this point where the numbers start really causing problems. And so for me, I've been through this. And so I experience what it's like to have this feel easy and then it's to feel hard. And then it's like to get out of your head about it and then to feel easy again. And so things
Mhm.
I've learned from other coaches, how to help support people when those moments come up. Because like it's not just, okay, well, never gonna look at her watch. All my athletes never look at your watch. No,
Yeah.
then I'm group coaching everyone and I'm not understanding them. But it's like, when do I need to step in and when do I need to let athletes problem solve? I think the other thing is coaches think they need to be like hovering over, like, what's a helicopter parenting all their athletes at all times, because that's, I'm a coach, I need to be here and involved in everything. Your athletes need to problem solve. And like you have to be able to let off a little bit and you have to be able to know when to step in. Like when I see an athlete spiraling about a injury and really getting in their head about stuff, yeah, I'm going to step in and like support. Like I don't know the answer to the injury, but they obviously need some support. And I'm going to help them maybe find a PT or find what they
Mhm.
need to. But I know in that moment, injury spirals are a real thing and they can really decimate an athlete and their mindset. So that's a time to step in. I think coaches, weirdly enough, step out when an injury because they sometimes feel like, oh, it's my fault. I don't want to
Yeah.
be there. I don't want to like talk to them. They're mad at me. I, I, I think that some athletes may blame their coach and maybe a coach pushed too hard, but most coaches aren't. We are trying to thread that line with the
Yeah.
knowledge we have of your life to help you not get injured. So stepping in when someone's injured and supporting is so important. That's what I learned because early on, I really did feel a little bit of guilt around that and a guilt when an athlete misses a race result. And I'd be like,
Mhm.
oh man, I screwed this up. And like I had friends tell me, like, no, your athlete just needs you, right? If you don't reach out after their bad race, they're going to think you're upset, you're mad, or that you're not even involved or care, right? So find a way to be involved and find a way to get out of your own head because it is hard as a coach because you do feel very much responsible for a lot of this. Coach guilt is a real thing and it's sometimes hard when you're so invested to like shake that. But
Mhm.
like it's my job to shake that, right? So showing up in these moments matters. These are things I've learned, like, how to be there in the moments that matter and how to kind of let people problem solve through things, when they're struggling with a pace. I'm off for a little bit. Okay, well, no, I think we know we can do this. You literally just like sometimes you just run a big race and then their paces change a little bit and they're like really struggling with that. I'm like, no, just give it a little bit of time. You got this. Keep working through it. If I step in and be like, all right, I'm changing your paces back or gonna do this, then I'm overdoing it, right? I'm overreaching. I'm helicopter parenting them. They don't need
Mhm.
that. They need to be able to also have some autonomy to problem solve because they have to run the race.
Yeah.
Um, and so being hands off enough that your athlete can trust themselves enough when they need to, but also involved enough that they know that you have their back and you're supporting them. Those are the big tools that I think are important for coaches to learn, and just like how much an athlete really leans on their coach because a lot of times they don't have someone else in their life who understands running
Mhm.
or cares about running as much as they want to talk about it, right? And
Yeah.
so being able to support that and help them like feel that joy for their accomplishments is super important. And their accomplishments aren't always a PR. It's like, look, I ran for 3 weeks straight and I didn't miss a day, or I navigated parenting alone for a month. That's
Mhm.
a huge win. It doesn't matter if we hit all our paces. Who cares? Like you got all your workouts in, or most of your workouts in, while solo parenting 3 kids. Absolute win. Let's celebrate that. I need to be
Big
there
win.
celebrating that with you, right? Because that's the stuff they need to know. And then when their race comes up, remind them, oh, remember how you solo parented for a month and did all these workouts? This race is much easier than that,
Mhm.
So that's the stuff that helps people get out of their heads.
And does your coach's speed or race times have anything to do with how good of a coach they are?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say I do not think so. This is why I don't put my pace out there because I feel like if I put out that I ran a 2.5 hour marathon, a 1:10 half, I'd get a lot of people like, oh, I want to run that. He can help me get there. My paces, my genetic ability, my training, and all my stuff have nothing to do with how good of a coach I am. I know tons of good coaches who haven't run a BQ. It doesn't mean they can't teach you to a BQ, can help you get one. They're so knowledgeable. They just maybe have different genetics, have had some bad luck. Bad weather now is a huge thing, and just unfortunately, every time they're peaking, their race is 96 degrees. So I a lot of people tell me, "Hey, Nick, you should embrace like your times," and like I share it sometimes, and yet it's like pinned on my profile, like my PR. But like when I talk about how I'm doing, I rarely do I mention that because I don't want people to think that's what makes me a good coach. Me running fast does not make me a good coach. And even if I coach fast people, it doesn't make me a good coach. I want people to say like, well, Nick was there. He supported me. He knows what's going on. He's always in my journey. He's, a parent who cares about running and knows how to navigate and balance it. That's what I want in my life. Not that he ran a fast time 6 years ago. Like, who
Mhm.
cares? But like so many coaches push that as like, well, I ran this time. I could be your coach. Or like, I have a 100% success rate in my athletes PRing. I'm like, well, that's like the least thing you should ever brag about. Like, that's nothing to do with you. If an athlete
Yeah.
PRs or not, it has nothing to do with my training. Like, I'm just here in their corner supporting them. They did it.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, exactly. And like you said, I think you just going through different experiences in running makes you who you are, and you can like have insight to what other people might be experiencing, and that's what makes you a good coach. But it has nothing to do with your time. We were talking about this offline too when you did that thread. I was like, my coach has never run a marathon, and I've run my three best marathons with this coach.
Yeah.
Because she's a damn good coach, and that's I didn't hire her because she runs a fast marathon. I think it's really interesting to, yeah, just to look at coaches from a different perspective other than their time on the clock or all of their athletes' performances and times or like what their body looks like. That's another huge one. Like your
Oh,
body's
yeah.
not your business card, but a lot of people really want it to be. And it's a lot more complicated than that. So I appreciate that part of the conversation too, just because um yeah, people are going to remember that. Yeah, Coach Nick like helped me squeeze like the best out of myself, even when that wasn't a time on the clock. And he was there for me when things were awful. um,
Yeah. And
yeah.
I've had athletes like not even know my PR and worked with me for a year and be like, wait, you ran that time? I'm like, yeah. Like, and they're like,
Mhm.
why did you say something? I'm like, because it doesn't matter. Like, I mean, I don't share that journey a ton anymore. And like, it doesn't matter to how good of a coach I am. Do you feel like I'm a good coach? Like that time doesn't matter. Right. And I think, the other part is sometimes fast runners don't know how to relate to,
Mhm.
everyday runners or slower runners. Or I think slower runners sometimes look at people who are fast and like, well, they wouldn't care about me the same. Again,
Mhm.
that's why I don't share about it because I don't care what your goal is. Like, do you love running? Do you
Yeah.
like enjoy chasing your goals? Do you have fun? Do you want someone in your corner? Do you want someone to support you and help you train? Then like I can a coach is for you, and I'd love to be your coach. I don't care what number you're chasing. Like it's so much fun to see people progress too. Like someone who just
Yeah.
started running and they're running 5 hours and they get to 4 hours. Like oh my god, that's like so cool. Like that's such a big
Mhm.
win. It doesn't matter like if what the time on the clock is or where they finish. They're chasing their potential and their best, and that's why I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that. Actually, too, for anyone listening who maybe is a new coach or is a coach for runners or wants to be a coach for runners, do you have any advice for like resources they can use or mindset or any tips that you would give like a new coach who's wanting to really embrace coaching the whole athlete?
Yeah, I'd say it's hard now because there's a lot of new coaches. A lot of
Yeah.
people, want to become a coach, maybe and some for the right reasons, and some just because they're monetizing their following.
Mhm.
It got really big, and they're like, "I'm a coach now," and it's like, okay, do you want to be a coach? Do you even care about coaching, or you just want to make money? Like, we're not. Most of us aren't in this. Like, anyway, I digress on that point. But like, for new coaches, I'd say like find it. Make sure you want to be a coach. Like, you can take some certifications like RCA, UASTF, or others, some of them aren't always driven about the athletes you're going to coach in the adult world, but like it shows you care and it shows you're interested in doing this. So to me, like as an athlete, like I want to see someone who's put in a little bit of work to be a coach, not just like I have 100,000 followers, so now I know how to be a coach, or I ran a fast time, I know how to be a coach, or I have a coach, so I know how to be a coach. Like those are not your credentials. Like get out of here.
Yeah.
Um, and so for newer coaches, like when I've had a couple talks with them, and I just say be yourself, share your journey, share your about your coaching mindset, share about why this matters to you, and don't just share about times. Don't just share about how like you've helped people PR. Like that's not. It may sound like that's what people want to hear, but in the end, you're also setting yourself up for failure because you're going to get an athlete who thinks I sign up for a coach, I get a PR. Right? Sometimes you sign up for these programs where it's like it's like a sub 3 program, and everyone thinks, oh, well, I just sign up and I'm guaranteed a sub 3. No, 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 you have to do some work. And like the coach can't guarantee anything, right? That's not what we can do. Any coach who guarantees, and this is what new coaches shouldn't do, guarantees you a PR, run away, right? They can't guarantee you that. They can guarantee that you will, they'll put a plan together. They can guarantee they'll support you. They can guarantee they'll get you as ready as possible. But like there's things we can't stop. We can't help. Your life circumstances, an injury, walk off a curb wrong, step somewhere wrong, pothole in the ground. Like that's I can't help that.
Mhm.
So, for new coaches, don't fall for the trick traps of social media to get attention. Not like here's three workouts to do to run your PR on your next race. Like absolutely wrong. There's no three workouts any coach could give you. If they did, every coach in the whole world would just give those three workouts to their best athletes and every one of them will win the Olympics. So like that's not how this works. And so those types of things, I know they get engagement and they're great for social media, but if you want to be a coach and you want to be someone who does this for a long time and has athletes who stick with you, be yourself, be authentic, share what's about your journey, make sure you're learning and having peers in the sport. Like have peers. I always look at like who are these coaches' peers? That would be an important thing to me. Who do they talk with? Who do they listen to? Who are they resharing? What do their athletes have to say about them and how they support? But like just how willing they are to learn, right? Like I don't know everything. I'm learning all the time and things change. All the time there's new, things I need to learn about, like bicarb or other things that just pop up. And I'm like, should we be doing this? Should we be having ketones 65 times per, I mean, in the middle of our long run? Like, these are things I have to learn as a coach and also rely on like, people like you, Holly. But like, I'm constantly having to learn and keep up with social media to keep my athletes. But as new coaches, your job is to protect your athletes. Your job is to support them. Share those messages, be authentically yourself. Yes, on social media you may grow slower, but your number of followers doesn't matter. I don't have a lot of followers and I've had a lot of quality athletes over the years that I love and I'm very blessed to have. So it's not always about just more followers equals more athletes. Like just try and be yourself and just try and share your information, and talk to people and learn from them.
Yeah, I think be your authentic self, appreciate nuance. We love the gray area.
Nuance.
And yeah, I mean, network with people who you trust and look up to and respect in the space because you'll learn so much from them and never stop learning. Yeah, I totally agree. I am learning all the time,
Yeah.
especially from my athletes. Like, I don't know if you feel this way too, but I mean, I talk about nutrition and running for a living, and I'll talk to my athletes and they're like, "Have you heard of this supplement? Have you heard of this workout? Have you heard of this influencer promoting this product?" And I'm like, "No." Because
Yeah.
I've like cultivated my feed to like look, I guess, how I want it to look. So I miss stuff all the time. So I'm learning so much from just like my clients and like what messaging they're hearing, and it's very eye-opening.
Yeah, I get the opposite. I get yelled at all the time from my co-host Amanda or others of like, Nick, why is this on your feed? I'm like, well, like I want to know the things that are happening, right? And so
Yep.
sometimes, like, if something crazy is going on, like I'll dive into it and then follow this next post and if I'll see this trend, I'm like, okay, well, this is a trend that my athletes are going to see if they use social
Yep.
media. So how do I help and get in front of it? How do I help support them? How do I help say like, hey, we're not going to do this thing, or this is not right, or no, we don't need to run 100 miles a week because some random person said that that's how they reach their, BQ. Like, no,
Mhm.
like, so, sometimes I have to throw my phone across the room and be like, ugh, and like then remute people. But like, yeah, my feed sometimes gets a little messy because I'm seeing this stuff because I'm trying to like learn what's out there.
You're like, please bring the chaos. Well, and then I'll have calls with people and we'll talk about like three different supplements. And then I'm just like getting ads for those supplements for
Oh,
like two
yeah.
weeks. And I'm like, okay, there it is. I found it. So yeah, it's the Wild West out there. And a lot of the times the trends are coming from people who are not experts because like our stuff isn't that interesting and it doesn't go viral. Because it's super like not sexy. And if it's not coming from an expert, I think, yeah, it's just important to say, okay, but like this person's not a coach. They don't coach people for a living, or they're not a dietitian, or they're not an exercise physiologist or a PT or whatever it is. So, do they have my best interest at heart, or are they just trying to get my views and my dollars? So I appreciate that. Is there anything else you want to add about being a happy, healthy runner who has longevity in the sport and coaching the whole athlete?
I would just add that like very early on, it can feel like success comes quick, and because you're new at the sport and like that's how this works. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden you get caught in that sauce, and all of a sudden you're like panicking because success isn't coming as quick. There's also genetics, right? And so you may start the same time as your friend, And
Oh,
you
yeah.
know that your friend may get faster quicker. Maybe let's say your friend runs a 3:29 in their second marathon and you run a 3:35 and you're stuck on 3:35 and they get to 3:27 and you're like, what am I doing wrong? Well,
Mhm.
maybe sometimes we all just have genetic barriers, either physical or mindset, that stop us at a certain spot. And it's not always a round number, but can
Mhm.
be. And then all of a sudden, if you keep pushing through that moment, and there's always this commercial I see about, I think it's this Asics like runner, and he was like running on the street and he runs through like a wall is in front of him and he runs through the wall. And then like keeps running and there's another wall. Like these are your barriers. Like, and they're not the same for everyone. So my
Mhm.
point was like you get stuck at 3:35 and all of a sudden you put all this work in, you put extra work in, it's harder to get past this barrier. You get past it, and all of a sudden now you're running 3:23 and your friend's stuck at 3:27. So like don't
Mhm.
compare other people, don't compare where you're stuck and they're stuck, even if you start at the same time. It doesn't mean you need to go match their training. You know, you may have 3 kids, they have 0, and you're not gonna no, we're not gonna do the same amount of miles. Like we don't have to. We have different stressors. So like be invested in this sport and feel the growth over a long time, right? Like my first time around, it took me 8 years to run my PRs in the 5K and 10K in high school and college. That's where I got to my peak and then I stopped. Second time
Mhm.
around in 2010, it took me till 2017, 2018 to get back to break all my college PRs.
Mhm.
Probably would have been a little faster if I got out of my head about a couple things here or there, you know, and stopped comparing to older Nick, but like it takes time, right? And so
Mhm.
you know, be okay with taking a little bit of time. Be okay with that every race. You don't just run a PR and then it's like, all right, well, now I ran 3:30. Next race, I'm going to 3:25. Okay, next one, I'm going to 3:20. Like you're setting yourself up for a lot of sadness, you know, and then
Mhm.
also just like, you know, I will say this because it gets a lot of hate, but like be careful around downhill racing, right? Like I would just say, like, you know, it
Oh, yeah.
the PRs count. I always tell my athletes, like, go run down a race, your PR counts, but just don't compare it to Chicago, like, or
Right.
Boston. Like, don't go run Big Bear and then say, okay, well, I'm going to take 5 minutes off my Big Bear time at Chicago or Boston. Like, that's a harder course. So just be okay with like accepting those PRs. You earn them. That's great. Share the time.
Mhm.
You don't even have to asterisk it. I don't care. But
Mhm.
like just when you set your PRs for a different course, just be okay with being like, okay, well, I might not be able to run that same time in this other course because that
Yeah.
sets people back too. And I feel like I've had a lot of athletes and see a lot of people on social media who are like, oh, I ran this time like 8 years ago. I'll never get back to it. You know, is that Big Bear? Is that something else? And like, well, you can get to that time, but like if you hold that time on a pedestal and you always want to run it again, you hold yourself back. So a lot of the stuff in this sport, like is around the idea of like giving yourself time, not letting anything define you more than it needs to, and just showing up. Like there were a lot of times I ran my biggest PRs. I didn't know I was that fit in the fall of 2018 when I ran those times. They shocked me
Mhm.
a little bit, but I kept showing up. I kept, you know, putting in the time, putting in the work, and then it showed up. So,
Mhm.
you know, you got to believe in yourself, but you also got to get out of your head a little bit and like don't amp yourself up every race and be like PR, ER, or PR, you know, I won't be happy. Like there was so
Mhm.
much growth in my running when I didn't PR, and
Mhm.
those were the races that got me to my PRs.
Yeah, I think I can reflect on that too. I feel like I'm super proud of my PR races, obviously, but I feel like I'm more proud of the ones that were really hard, but like I still showed up.
Yeah.
And I think you learn the most from those races too. And I appreciate you bringing up the downhill thing too, because I agree. It's like if you're, and I'll insert an ad here for if you're listening to this and you like listening about not comparing yourself, go visit Amanda Katz's podcast episode that I did with her, I think 2 years ago on the comparison trap, because we talked about this for an hour. But um, which is your co-host, which is why I bring it up.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, I agree. If you're gonna go like down that rabbit hole, it's like, okay, that's a downhill race time. So we're already talking about completely different courses. It's like if you go into the trail running world, they don't even care about time because
Nope.
all the courses are so different. Um, you know, that person has totally different life stressor variables than you. Maybe they have different genetics than you too, probably. They might have had different weather. Like it just there's so many factors. So this is what we mean when we say coaching the whole athlete. There's just a lot of variables, and we're all very tough on ourselves. So it's good to keep showing up and doing the work and adjust when you need to, but remember that it's not black and white. Um, well, Nick, where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, at Instagram, I'm N Klastava. I've also have a podcast called Between Two Coaches with Amanda Katz.
Mhm.
I also am one-on-one head coach at Running Explained. So I've been loving that journey. I also started writing a little bit more on Substack. I'm also Nick Klastava there. So if you want to check out some of my writings, And yeah, that's it. I think that's all my social medias.
Yeah, and we'll put those in the show notes so people can go find you. Especially yeah, if they wanna find a coach or just be in space with a coach like yourself who's sharing solid information on the internet. Now I want to ask you the end of the pod question. So picture you're running like the best race of your life. You're coming down that finish line. What song would be playing to embody how you're feeling in that moment?
Yeah, it would be Avicii RIP Levels.
Nice.
That was like my jam. I probably played that song more than any song I've ever played in my life. It's always like the one that pumps me up. If I'm coming to the finish line, that's coming on. It'd be iconic.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I was gonna say no one said that song before, which I feel like is a very obvious one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Love that. I haven't heard that song in a while. It's probably I haven't been in college in a while. That's probably why. I love that answer. Well, Nick, thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope people go check you out. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Bye.